not walk softly into the jaws of the dragon. Do not accept the loathsome embrace of the beast at the heart of the horror, but instead discover that fearsome face, teeth bared, eyes aspark with ice-cold hate, sinews braced for the fall. And yet, I feel the beast does not await me at the maze's dark core. I am on the edge of knowing, and yet I am afraid that the knowledge will cause me to walk, a willing sacrifice, into the jaws of the dragon.
Shadowman is one of the best games I've ever played. I'd have to sit down and think more of my list, but after finishing, it feels like a top 25er on my list. And this was my first time playing it. Now, back in the day, a younger Boulder did try to make it a rental on the blockbuster night for the N64, but Mama and Papa Boulder said no. Having now played it, that turned out to be a good thing. The atmosphere of Shadowman is some of the best, most unsettling I've come across. This would have given me nightmares as a kid. There have been many games I've covered on this channel where I was kicking myself after for not having played it sooner. But none as much as Shadowman. It's a title I've been aware of since my early days. I mean, when you have an N64 full of child-friendly games, this dude is going to stand out. I was aware of the influence games like Zelda and Resident Evil had on it, but I wasn't expecting to see a whole bunch of Tomb Raider's DNA within Shadowman, or how its progression and its exploration is like a Metroidvania before that became a well-established template, and a 3D one to boot, which is still a rarity these days. 1999, the year Shadowman's release, saw many classic games. Silent Hill, Resident Evil 3, Soul Calibur, Unreal Tournament, Quake 3 Arena, Final Fantasy VIII, System Shock 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Planescape Torment, Super Smash Bros. There's many others I haven't mentioned, but it seemed like every other week we were getting a new landmark title. Shadowman slots in there with the very best. And to go along with that, Shadowman sets a standard for what a remaster should be. This is what I played for the video. Now, to be fair, the bar is quite low when it comes to remasters. Lack of options, unnecessary changes in art direction, censorship, new bugs, Unreal Engine shenanigans. Something where it's clear was slapped together and given to the lowest bidder. Night Dive Studios, who remastered Shadowman, are guilty of buggy remasters like Blade Runner, but not here. You have choices for modern quality of life changes with visuals, controls, or you could keep it in line with the original. They added in cut content, like levels cut for time from the original. They even brought back the original game's composer to remaster the music, the sound, and compose new tracks for the restored levels. It was very much a labor of love and should be what all remasters strive to be. Because more people should experience Shadowman, a game that isn't afraid to let you explore and get lost in its immersive world, where few games have been able to match its sense of exploration and progression. In a different timeline, studios took more cues from Shadowman. Intricate, interconnected worlds, instead of a slew of open world titles that became glorified checkbox simulators. Before we dive in, as Shadowman is based on a comic book series, this video will also dive into the comics, at least the ones up until the release of the game. I'll bring up elements from the comics here and there throughout covering the game, with a further dive later in the video on the comics themselves. If you did play the original version and the remastered version of Shadowman, I am curious to hear about your experiences in the comments below. And a quick shout out to those who further support the channel through Patreon, YouTube memberships, and one-time donations. If you're interested in supporting the channel further, check the pinned comment or description. With that, let's dive into the world of Shadowman. Starting a new game, we're greeted to the sounds of Moonlight Sonata. We get a monologue from one of the most well-known serial killers in history, Jack the Ripper.
The 9th of November, 1888. By my deeds am I known, and I am known as Jack. Spring-heeled Jack, Jack the Ripper. By my deeds am I known, and they are truly bloody. I took them all to my heart. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Kelly, and and loved them, truly loved them all. But the immortal power I sought within the sordid confines of their bodies, the still beating organ of the soul, was not to be found. The ritual of the knife was to no avail. I am bereft, and must therefore perform that bloody ritual upon myself.
Stay your hand, Jack, and listen to what I have to say.
How did you find this place? Who are you?
My name is Legion, for we are many. The immortal power that you seek does exist. It does indeed lie within the soul, but only within certain ones, certain dark souls.
My God!
Hand it over, that thing, your dark soul.
Prepare to hear the term Dark Souls many a time. Doing a search through the game's script, the term pops up 28 times. This doesn't include the times our protagonist mentions it each time he picks one up.
Dark souls are fine.
Back to Legion and Jack the Ripper.
What are you that you can produce such things from thin air?
Merely an explorer, much like yourself.
What is it that you want from me?
You are an architect by trade, are you not?
I am.
Then I would have you build a cathedral to pain. A place where you and I and others like us may join together. A place of asylum for all of the unique and misunderstood individuals that will follow you as the time of Armageddon approaches. And at the heart of Asylum, we shall construct a great dark engine powered by souls of equal hue. And we shall harness their power to create an immortal army to punish and cleanse this pathetic world.
And where might I build this cathedral of yours?
Across the veil, in the darkness, amongst the restless spirits of those who have passed beyond, in the place known as Deadside.
Then, if I am to join you, I must die.
It is prophecy. We cannot fail, for we are many.
For we are many.
Amen to that.
I see so much of David Bowie in Legion's appearance here. Funny enough, Bowie did record a song called Shadowman. We cut to the present day, that being the late 90s of New Orleans, over the Wild at Heart bar. In the bed we find two key characters to Shadowman, Agneta, or Nettie, a voodoo priestess, and our protagonist, the Shadowman himself, Michael Lavoie.
The end is sooner than you think. Come to mama, baby.
Hey there, catface.
You can.
Dental plan.
Lisa needs braces.
There's a darkness coming.
What's the problem, Agneta?
I had a dream, Shadowman. A real bad dream. A dead-side dream. The five are here. The heralds of the apocalypse. Deacon's file confirms everything I feared. The end's coming, Shadowman. An ancient prophecy tells of the return of a great evil to Deadside. A terrible force gathering dark souls to its darker heart and using their power to cross over into this world and bring about apocalypse.
I must stop this evil from bringing about the end of all things.
Only you can do it, Shadowman. You are the walker between the worlds. I can't go Deadside, and Jaunty's next to useless in both worlds. You are the only one who can do anything about this.
As it ever was.
But you ain't never confronted anything like this evil. It's so pure, not even the ancient protectors of the Dark Souls could destroy it. They could only banish it from Deadside. They knew it'd come back one day, hence the prophecy telling of its return. The power of the ancients is all but gone now, and the Dark Souls that evil desires lie unprotected. What you gotta do, Shadowman, is to go Deadside and recover the Dark Souls. Take them into your own protection before evil gathers them to its terrible heart.
Okay, so let me get this straight. If I don't recover these dark souls, then the world's gonna end. Am I right?
You got it.
Shit.
Look, I gotta go. I've got a lot to do. Take Deacon's file and meet me at dawn at the church on the hill. I've kept your stuff safe for you.
For further context of the world of Shadowman, the legacy of the Shadowmen stretches back thousands of years. African warriors blessed by the gods to protect their tribes against threats crossing over from the spiritual plane known as Deadside. Deadside is where everyone goes when they die. In this world, it doesn't matter what deeds you did, good or evil, while alive. There is no heaven, there is no hell. There is only Deadside. The power of the shadowman dwindled during the slave trades of the 16th to 19th century. At the tail end of the 19th century, Nettie, the priestess here, crafted a mask of shadows. The wearer of the mask, the shadowman, would have the power to keep the forces of Deadside at bay. There could only be one shadowman in existence at one time with the mask. There have been 4 shadowmen, the bearers of the mask, since Nettie first crafted it. Maxim St. James, Cole Cardinaux, Jack Boniface, and the current shadowman are protagonists Michael Leroy. Maxim St. James makes an appearance during the beginning and end stretch of the comic's first run from 1992 to 1995. Maxim is brought up in the game and left behind some writings for Michael. Cole Cardinaux is only mentioned in passing in the comics and never makes an appearance. The third shadowman, Jack Boniface, is the protagonist of the comic's first run. He doesn't make an appearance here or is even mentioned in the game. Michael Leroy would take the mantle of Shadowman in the comic's second run from 1997 to 1998. Unlike the past Shadowman, Michael doesn't wear the mask. Nettie grafted it upon his body, exhibiting further control of Shadowman as her pawn in the game she plays. Unlike Nettie, the Shadowman can walk between the 2 worlds, live side and dead side. He can access his powers when darkness falls as the Lord of Deadside, which Michael loves to mention throughout our time in game.
I am the Lord of Deadside.
For more about Nettie, she's looking pretty good here considering she's been around since at least the end of the 19th century, isn't she? According to the comics, she's around 150 years old, give or take. She's lost count. She puts those voodoo powers of hers to good use. That said, the game does take some liberties to its canon. The manual for the game says she's centuries old. The manual for the second Shadowman game says she's around 400 years old. Thing is, this isn't her original body. At least I think, if you've taken the comics into consideration. For in the comics' original run, with Jack Boniface as Shadowman, she could use her powers to appear youthful, but only did so on the rare occasion. She stopped keeping up appearance back in the 1940s. There's one stretch in the comics where she's stuck in her youthful form and seeks out help to return to her current day appearance. In the comic's second run with Michael as Shadowman, she takes over the body of Claudine, a prostitute that Michael takes a liking to. As a result, she now has an unending sexual appetite. She feels the need to samba on the regular.
She moves me in mysterious ways, and brother, sometimes she really does move me.
And what happened to Claudine, the body Nettie took over? Nettie bashed her mind into a black cat. Arriving at the church after a brief gameplay stretch, Michael will gather his equipment and receive further instructions from Nettie.
Release the dark soul and take it into yourself. But be warned, the dark souls are a pure and ancient evil and possess a power that should not be abused.
Okay. Let's just get this thing over with. You got my stuff?
Right here.
A real scare, Mike.
Jesus, Luke! He's alive! Alive and in pain. I gotta help him.
He's dead, Mike. You know that.
I know, but I saw.
It's understandable that you still have strong feelings for your brother. That's why the bear works for you, connecting you to Deadside. Use it now, Mike. Go Deadside and find Jonty. He's waiting for you at the Meadow Gates. He's got something to show you.
Okay.
So what's the deal with Michael Leroy? What happened to his family? How did he become the Shadowman? How did Nettie decide that he be the next Shadowman after Jack Boniface? The manual gives a brief overview, but let's dive into the comics for more details. Michael lived a lie. His parents thought he was thriving as an English literature university student. In reality, Michael dropped out, becoming a taxi driver to pay the bills. One day, by chance, a passenger involved in drugs and gangs ends up dropping around $20,000 in the back of his cab. Michael takes the money and runs with it, helping out his parents and his younger brother with that money. This catches up to him later on. The gang tracks Michael down, wanting their money back, plus interest. Michael hires a voodoo priest to protect him, which works when those after their money drive him off a bridge while out driving. He survives the crash, but not his family. His mother, his father, and his younger brother Luke die in the crash. Michael ends up in a year-long coma as a result of the crash. Walking between 2 worlds in the coma, the live side and dead side, made him the perfect candidate for being the next Shadowman. In his time in a coma, Nettie came by to visit. Using her voodoo powers, she whispered into his ear everything that she wanted Michael to be. how to kill with knives, with guns, with his bare fists, to blunt his emotions so he would kill without a second thought, to seek out the wild at heart bar when he awoke from his coma. When Michael awakens, he has no memory, not even his own name, going by Zero. Michael would eventually cross paths with Nettie at the Wild at Heart bar. There, she would make him the next Shadowman. But instead of wearing the mask like Jack and the prior Shadowmen, she wanted more control. She grafted the mask onto Michael's chest. Grafting the mask on the chest as opposed to wearing it works for Michael as a character. This stoic, stone-cold killer. And as a game protagonist, it's cooler than wearing a mask. As the Shadowman, Michael can walk between the worlds of Life Side and Dead Side. He also has his memory back, and now a pawn in the game that Nettie plays. To be fair, it's not like he had a lot going on otherwise. I mean, he flunked out of university as an English literature major. Beyond academia, there are slim pickings as far as jobs go, even less for dropouts. Well, he could look into the realm of voice acting with that voice of his. I didn't realize it first, but Red Pepper voiced Michael. He voiced countless movie trailers with that deep voice of his.
Men in black, protecting the Earth from the scum of the universe.
I miss those days of movie trailers with voiceovers, as opposed to movie trailers featuring the Inception sound and a sad slow pop song cover in the background. That said, it does feel like they dialed back on the bass with his voice here. It's still great, but not as cool as his movie trailer voice. That voice is right up there with the likes of Tony Jay or Orson Welles for having such a commanding presence. With Luke, his younger brother's teddy bear, we as Michael can pass back and forth between Live Side and Dead Side. Most of the game will be spent in the Dead Side sections. Heading over there, we meet up with Jaunty at the gates, with the asylum laying before us.
Hello there, Michael. How's that treating you?
Jaunty, kindly refer to me as Shadowman. Michael Awa has no place here in Dead Side.
Whatever, Mick, it's good to see you again. Seems like simply ages since I last set me eyes on your happy, smiling mug.
The feeling's mutual.
I suppose you've been away dallying with the old battle axe, giving her one with some of that righteous voodoo so she can stay forever young?
Something like that.
She's been filling your head with her fated pillow talk again, I'll bet. Doomsday in an army giddy until you're drunk with the stuff.
She did happen to mention a certain prophetic dream she's been having.
Did she now? Well, for once I think the owl witch might be right. See that bloody big black tower yonder?
How could I miss it?
Well, old Bruegel, the medieval painter blokey, was just telling me the other day that he thought it looked remarkably like a picture he once did.
Is that Peter Bruegel?
No, Seamus, his distant Irish cousin. Anyways, he was quite shocked, so he was, at the terrible mess that bloody thing's making. Appearing out of nowhere and tearing its way through the place like there's no tomorrow. Which, given what Nettie's saying, might not be too far from the truth.
Any idea what's going on in there?
Nope, and I shan't be knocking on the front door to find out neither. All I'd say is, if there's something wicked heading this way, it'll be coming from in there.
Nettie mentioned the Dark Souls. Can you tell me any more about them?
I'm afraid I'll have to reply in the negative again, Michael. Suffice it to say, Nettie's told me that they're bloody powerful, well nigh indestructible, and shouldn't fall into the wrong hands.
Any idea where they might be?
What am I, a Dark Soul travel guide now? I suppose you could try all of the ancient sacred places down amongst the whalers and shiverers. I just hope that none of them souls have ended up in that filthy big black tower.
From what Nettie was saying, some of them already have, which is all the more reason for me to be pushing on. Open the gates, Jaunty.
Places to go, people to see, eh, Michael?
Just open the gates, Jaunty.
Did I ever tell you about the time me and Attila the Hun were playing skittles with the guillotine heads of the French aristocracy?
Jaunty.
All right, keep your bloody hair on. Which, looking at your shining bonds, may prove to be rather difficult. Open sesame! And if you be wanting to pop by and chat a while, I'll still be here. It's just a shame we can't share a drop of the hard stuff together by a roaring peat fire.
I don't drink with snakes.
Jaunty is our source of amusement and wit within Shadowman. He'll have many things to say over the course of the game when we come back to chat with him. As Nettie herself can't go to Deadside, Jaunty is her eyes and ears there. Jaunty can take a different form in the comics beyond his snake skull form here as a dwarf. Something about that Irish accent of his makes me think of Matthew Matosis hopped up on speed. Like I'm waiting for him to wax poetry about gameplay mechanics.
Never underestimate a community's ability to take a cool feature and use it for the most boring thing imaginable. Players want convenience so they can fast travel and respec their stats, removing absolutely any and all tension wherever possible, just like every other RPG from the past 10 years.
With that, we're off to the races. Our goal is to collect the Dark Souls scattered about Deadside to build up enough power to face Legion and his cronies. Exploration is the heart of Shadowman. While I've played similar titles, there's not much out there that handles progression like Shadowman. A 1999 release, 3D gaming had ironed out most of the kinks by this point. Best practices were beginning to emerge, but there was still room for experimentation. Some approaches worked, some didn't. Shadowman? My goodness, did it nail its approach on almost all levels. The higher-ups at Acclaim wanted something along the lines of Zelda meets Resident Evil. On the atmosphere side, they get the Resident Evil element and to an extent the Zelda element right there, and surpass it in many ways. You could see it as well with the backtracking and some of the looping level design. Again, same goes for Zelda. But while playing Shadowman, Tomb Raider popped to mind more than any other title, especially for level design. You could see plenty of Tomb Raider's DNA within. And when you look at the leads of Shadowman's development, things click into place. For a few reasons. The two creative directors for Shadowman were Guy Miller and Simon Phipps. Here's an image I found the two of them together in all its low poly glory. 216 by 300 pixels. Simon Phipps is one of the co-founders of Core Design. To note, he himself did not work on Tomb Raider. Guy Miller worked as a creative manager on the Tomb Raider series. Prior to Core Design, he did work at Rare working on Battletoads. Both ending up at Acclaim T-side and put at the helm of the project. It's the level design of Shadowman where I most feel the Tomb Raider connection. Intricate levels that reward exploration and curiosity. Thief 1 and 2 have a similar approach to its level design. It's something that's a bit of a lost art these days, especially for large budget titles. Not to say it's gone altogether, FromSoft's output is a great example, but it's far more of a rarity. Now it's dominated by open worlds or linear experiences where games are fearful of giving the player any sense of exploration. Shadowman isn't afraid to confuse the player and have them get lost in these levels. I did many a time while first exploring these levels, and yes, at times there could be some frustrations with that. The sheer joy and wonder of finding my way through them more than outweighed the occasional frustrations. You'll find yourself having branching paths at many points. Pick one and see where it takes you. Don't worry about filling out your map and then choosing the other path, because there is no conventional map. Shadowman only offers a high-level map of the game world. It will tell you what shadow level you need to unlock coffin gates. You'll need to collect Dark Souls to raise your shadow level. Have a high enough shadow level and Michael will tear them down, declaring himself the Lord of Deadside. Else it takes a heavy toll on him as he fails to open it. The map also shows what items you can find in which areas, but that's all you get. The winding, maze-like nature you'll find yourself amongst these levels, it's all on you to find your way through. Either keep that in your head or jot some notes down about it. It's the polar opposite of what you see from a game these days. Bringing up Tomb Raider again, Shadowman does have differences to its progression. This isn't a level-by-level basis. This is an interconnected world. There's plenty of areas off limits at first. Not only behind coffin gates due to not having a high enough shadow level. You'll see a Dark Souls beyond a pool of lava, or there's a platform that's out of reach at the moment, or there are blocks covered in fire that Michael can't push, at least at first. You'll have to come back later. I had a bit of cursory knowledge of Shadowman before playing it, but this wasn't the way I was expecting progression to work. After a bit of time in the game, I had a thought pop to mind. Is Shadowman a Metroidvania? And a 3D one to boot? Well, yeah, it is. But it's not like when they designed the game they said, hey, let's make ourselves a Metroidvania. Now, Metroidvania can be a bit of a nebulous term, like immersive sims. What does and doesn't fall underneath it? Today, it's become a well-established genre as far as conventions go and what to expect from one. But if you look at the time frame of Shadowman's release in 1999, with development starting in 1997, the Metroidvania template wasn't really a thing. Metroid was 3 titles deep by then, Super Metroid being the most recent title back in 1994. Castlevania Symphony of the Night came out in 1997, a landmark title that helped, along with Metroid, to set the template for the Metroidvania. But it wasn't until the early 2000s that really began to take off, the handheld Castlevania titles being key entries. And even until the present, Metroidvanias tend to remain in the realm of 2D and the realm of indies. It's slim pickings as far as 3D Metroidvanias go. You have the Metroid Prime series, Batman Arkham Asylum, a game I've covered on the channel is another, and Shadowman. But again, it's not like the team behind Shadowman went, okay, let's set out to make a Metroidvania. Looking through developer interviews, I couldn't find any mention of Metroid or Symphony of the Night being an influence. Zelda and Resident Evil came up as the primary influence and mandate from on high for what Shadowman would be. It's possible that Metroid and Castlevania did have some influence, but it seems more that they had their own idea in mind and went with it. They took some chances and experimented, and that result more or less ends up being a Metroidvania. And that's what makes this earlier time frame of 3D gaming that started to take off with its 5th generation, the N64, the PS1, the Saturn era, so fascinating. Some games age like a fine wine. Tomb Raider, Mario 64, Shadowman. But there were many growing pains during this time that hindered early 3D releases. Controls and cameras being key culprits. Best practices were emerging, but common conventions and preconceived notions that we take for granted today were still forming. Budgets and team sizes were still small enough that publishers were willing to throw things at the wall to see what sticks. And Shadowman is a perfect example of one of those experiments that stuck to the wall with its approach. And it's not like you have the conventional Metroidvania upgrades or abilities. There's no double jump or higher jump to unlock. One navigational upgrade will unlock the ability to climb these bloodfalls, which Michael does take a sweet time doing. You can't jump onto them and climb, you have to start at the very bottom, which can be tedious over the course of time. But there's one navigational ability unlock that trumps all others. The one where you get to live out every kid's dream. Remember being a kid and playing the floor is lava? Well, what if you could walk on and go anywhere you want? That's something you can unlock in Shadowman. At first, the lava is a roadblock, but once you gain the ability to walk on it, the world of Deadside is your oyster. I love how the game makes such a big deal of obtaining some of these abilities. And of course your mind starts to think back. What past areas can I make use of this in? More so in Shadowman as you don't have an in-game map where you can mark things down. It's either in your head or on notes you took yourself. But there's still another roadblock as far as lava goes until later on. You can walk on certain surfaces, but you can't swim in the deep lava. That's still unavailable to Michael until later in the game. Once you unlock the ability to swim through lava, you're on a whole different playing field. That inner kid of yours could never comprehend such a thing as you jump from couch to couch avoiding the lava. There's a few other items I'll come across to unlock past and future roadblocks, ones with multiple purposes. You could use them in combat as well as for progression, like the baton. Use it against enemies or use it at altars to warp to another altar. On the note of warping, Shadowman does make use of checkpoints for levels. Once you reach that certain location, you'll get a notification and can use Luke's teddy bear to warp to that point on the level. This also serves as where you're kicked back to if you die, or unless you quick load.
There must be something around here.
The flambeau works as a weapon, a source of light, and breaking down certain walls. The marteau has a splash attack, but can use also on drums that you find throughout Deadside. The calabash destroys specific panels and works as a bomb, one that takes a fair amount of time to go off, and one I died to by accident more than I care to admit. It's interesting to note how Shadowman lets you know what to expect as far as abilities go. Early on in Deadside, we'll come across a Book of Prophecies, one provided to us by Maxim St. James, the first Shadowman. He's the one who built these paths around Deadside for navigation. He's cataloged the ancient artifacts of power and what they do. Sure, as we go through the world of Deadside, we'll make note of these repeating roadblocks. Something down the line will unlock them. It spells out what to expect, but not in a gamey kind of sense. Comes in the form of a prophecy in what Maxim St. James cataloged in his time in Deadside. While the map is bare bones, it will show us the areas of where we can find these key items. I brought up earlier that Guy Miller, one of the creative directors of Shadowman, worked at Rare. While he left after making Battletoads, you can see that Rare DNA within Shadowman with its Collectathon elements, one that became a bit of a trademark of Rare during this time frame. As mentioned earlier, Michael needs to collect Dark Souls. Once he reaches a certain amount, his Shadow level increases. This allows him to unlock coffin gates up to that Shadow level. There are 120 Dark Souls in total to collect. Funny to note that number of 120. That's the same amount of stars you could collect in Mario 64. you need to collect at least 95 Dark Souls to complete Shadowman. Again, be ready to hear Michael speak of how the Dark Souls are now his. But every once in a while, once he hit that threshold, his shadow level increases. It's always a great moment to hit that milestone.
The power of the Dark Souls. I embrace it.
Now you're taking a look at your map to see which coffin gates you can now unlock. You may decide to warp away from the current level despite having more to explore and unlock a coffin gate and head down that way. That's the beauty of these kind of games, the sheer joy of getting lost and exploring to your heart's content. But the game does put up some roadblocks along the critical path, but you're free to explore areas prior, unlocking it piece by piece and returning once you gain further abilities. There's very much a timeless quality to it. It scratches that human itch of curiosity and exploration and see what's around the next corner. So it makes Shadowman such a satisfying sense of progression that few games can match. Many modern games fall into the trap of artificial progression, where it's more about checking something off a box or watching numbers go up, tossed into games when there's no real need to. You might feel that brief sense of accomplishment only for it to ring hollow when all is said and done. That's not the case for Shadowman. In a different time frame, we saw more games take an approach like Shadowman compared to heading down the open world route. Padded out run times with Skinner box progressions that keep the player engaged, where you'll see someone put hundreds of hours into it only to leave a not recommended review on Steam. Shadowman scratches a niche for me that few other games can when it comes to progression. To any budding game developer out there, look to Shadowman for inspiration. It's a game I recommend you looking at for ideas of how to design levels or satisfying progression systems. It's one of those games where I thought, I'll play 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, and then before I know it, it's another hour or two later. Beyond the Dark Souls, we can collect Cadeaux. There's 666 of them we could find. For each 100 we find, we could use them at the Temple of Life to increase our total health.
These gifts I give to thee, O gracious Loa, O generous Loa, a spiritual trade for life beyond.
So during this time frame of Shadowman, a very young Boulder was very much into these kind of games with the Collectathon, Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie. Around this time frame of Shadowman's release, you had Donkey Kong 64, another rare title, one which more or less pushed the Collectathon to the limit. One that even as a young lad I felt was overkill with how much there was to collect. Shadowman has that right balance. As brought up earlier, it's one of those interesting what-ifs. If I did actually have the chance to rent this game back in the day when I made a blockbuster night, but Mom and Papa Boulder wouldn't agree to it. And again, seeing how the atmosphere is, which we'll get into a bit here, it's for the best. But I did play more mature games at a friend's house who had a much older brother and a PlayStation 1. That's how I got to experience the Resident Evil games for the first time. But I never got the chance to try Shadowman on the PlayStation 1. And seeing how it turned out, that's also for the best. Their main focus was on the N64 version, with the PS1 version starting later in development. And looking at that wretched frame rate, the PS1 version could have used a lot more time in the oven. So if there's anyone out there watching where the PS1 version was how you first experienced Shadowman, my condolences. Blows my mind that they were able to get this game working on the N64, and the expansion pack wasn't required to play it. It would boost the resolution. The amount of technical wizardry to get this game on one cartridge is mind-boggling. Such a contrast compared to today. Please understand, dear customer, our game needs to be 100 plus gigabytes, plus a 30 gigabyte day one patch. Another area where you could feel that Tomb Raider DNA to a lesser extent is the platforming. Michael handles more like a conventional platforming protagonist, contrast to the grid-based system approach to Tomb Raider. But you can feel part of it in navigating ledges. You need to have at least one hand free to grab onto a ledge. Both hands need to be free if you want to move. You could hang down lower or move up higher so you could leap away from the ledge. The game has a few of these stretches, but if anything it feels like they underutilized it as far as navigational puzzles go. That said, they also found cases where it was unclear that if it was a ledge I could grab onto or simply a texture on the wall. There's always a bit of tension while making jumps, especially early on when you can't walk on lava. Not what I call sloppy, but Michael doesn't handle as tight as a Mario platformer. There's the right amount of tension to have confidence in your jump, but not 100%. You still have to be careful with each jump while platforming. I do want to mention the control differences with the remastered version. It's updated to handle like any twin stick title, where the A and D key or left and right on the left stick has Michael strafing. But there is the option to select the classic controls. When Shadowman was on controllers that only had one control stick, like the N64 or Dreamcast. In that case, classic controls has the left and right stick turning Michael instead of strafing. If you want to strafe, you need to hold down the lock button. like Ocarina of Time with Z targeting. I did play the game with the modern control setup. Only near the end of my playtime for capturing footage did I try the classic controllers with a controller. It was a bit awkward at first, as I got used to the twin-stick approach. I didn't feel like I was missing out on too much as a result. Well, what do I mean by that? Changing the controls can change the way how you approach the game, like tank controls. Try playing the Resident Evil remake with modern controls and say goodbye to most of the tension that tank controls provided. While I haven't played the Tomb Raider remasters, offering modern controls seem to defeat the purpose of the grid-based platforming, where it removes the tension and intricacies of controls provided. It's something we take for granted these days as best practices emerged. I didn't feel that way with Shadowman. The twin-stick approach that's become the standard fits right in and doesn't take away from the experience. And that twin-stick approach feels more at home with the combat of Shadowman. It's nothing outstanding, it's serviceable. You could lock on, you could roll the dodge. Although you can't roll backward for some reason, you can only jump back in its place. But the dual wield system does offer a nice bit of strategy and decision making when it comes to your shots. One gun you'll always want to have on hand is the shadow gun. There's no ammo limit, it doesn't deplete our voodoo meter, our magic meter. Depending on what your shadow level is, you can further charge up your shadow gun for more damage. If you use it as the killing blow against enemies, as long as you're not playing on the horror difficulty, the enemy will drop health. Of course, you could also find health spread throughout the world, tucked away in barrels, but you also have your voodoo weapons that will collect throughout. You need voodoo to use them. Each weapon will use a varying amount. Save for a few enemies, you can kill them with a voodoo weapon, but no health item will drop. You'll have to explore the environments to replenish your voodoo. As a result, especially early on in Shadowman, there's a bit of a juggling act with fighting enemies. With a shadow gun in one hand and a voodoo weapon in another, what do you want to use against a certain enemy? What's your next attack going to be? I had plenty of fun trying to find that right balance. Which voodoo weapon can I hit an enemy with once and follow up with a shadow gun to finish them off and refill up my life bar? That changes, of course, as you increase your shadow level. How much voodoo do you have on hand? How much does this weapon use? While not a deep system by any stretch, there is some moment-to-moment decision-making for weapons use that complements the Shadowman experience. And a nice addition to the remastered version is a weapon wheel. Instead of going to the menu, you could switch between weapons for each hand in real time. I found myself using the shadow gun combined with the flambeau on the regular. The flambeau is not only great for short distance weapon, but for lighting up the dark, which the game oozes in, both in a figurative and literal sense. Within Deadside, there are 3 distinct areas, one being the outskirts of Deadside, something like an overworld. The game eases you in with these stretches, with easier enemies to deal with. I love this one enemy type and how they say Shadowman when they see you. Whenever you enter a new area for the first time, Michael will give a short monologue to flesh out some of the world and lore of Deadside.
Spoken of in whispers at the Deadside margins, in the hushed and shivering tones of the lurking, lurching revenants. These ancient places, blood temples to the lower, where the dark souls did find their secret corner, hidden by the sanguinary sisters steeped in voodoo lore.
The second of the 3 distinct areas of Deadside are the temple stretches. There are 3 temples that hold key items for exploration, ones that allow us to hold onto fire, walk on lava, or swim in it. These levels bear strong resemblance to a Zelda dungeon. This is where the game will test you most with your platforming and navigation skills. These temples also have the best enemies in the game, the Sisters of Blood. While exploring temple sections for the first time, they're statues. But once you collect something like a Dark Soul or make enough progress, they'll emerge to attack us, which Michael will make note of. They're like flying sirens with their appearance and their voices. The music during the temple sections will have this otherworldly, ethereal singing, which I'm guessing is coming from the sisters.
The sisters awake.
But once they emerge, they're merciless. They have their voice reversed and fire off magical boomerangs at us. These fights can get quite chaotic depending on which room you're in. You could be fighting over a handful of sisters at once. Especially later on when you revisit temples, these sisters are already free and not in their statue form. I'm prepared to hear that Morrowind magic sound over and over again. I'm 99% certain this is the same sound sample for casting spells in Morrowind. Games from this time frame love to pull from the same sample libraries. The temple sections are where Shadowman is at its best with its gameplay, but I do prefer the third area type within Deadside, the Asylum stretches. My goodness, these Asylum stretches. Now it's time to gush about the atmosphere of Shadowman. It's one of the most atmospheric games I've ever played, up there with the very best. Vampire Bloodlines, the Condemned series, the Stalker series, Team Silent era of Silent Hill. These are the inner workings of what you'll see what Legion has in mind. Maze-like levels that are disorienting and off-putting. What's going on down here? You'll find Deadsiders locked up in cages or being experimented on by the other enemy types, like the Hookman and the Surgeons. The Hookman come in various forms, some with claws, some with rifles, others with a chainsaw. But those pig-like noises they make? Utterly horrifying. But the head honchos here to deal with on the enemy front are the Surgeons. The bane of my existence in Shadowman that drove me up the wall many a time. I always seem to underestimate them. They shoot projectiles in bursts at Michael. Sometimes 1 or 2 bursts, sometimes more. I found this throwing me off on the regular when it came to dodging. And I swear at times it felt like their projectiles bent at the end to hit Michael, or his hitbox was larger than I thought. A majority of my deaths came from the Surgeons, and they're by far the most annoying enemies to deal with, but in a good way. More that I would get sloppy and underestimate how much damage they could do in such a short time frame. And then you have the music during these stretches. Now the music across the whole in this game is phenomenal, but these stretches, they're like the more abstract songs from the Quake soundtrack done by Trent Reznor dialed up to 11. Like the Playroom section. You know the music track I'm talking of if you played this game. Now, I played Shadowman with headphones, and it takes a fair amount for a game to unnerve me, but these music tracks and these maze-like asylum levels did the trick. Again, it was a good thing back in the day Mama and Papa Boulder turned down a Young Boulder punch from renting this game at Blockbuster. These tracks and the asylum levels will have left a mark and given me nightmares. No wonder Shadowman did so well in the N64, a system with slim pickings for mature games, making it a standout title. One reviewer called the game Zelda's evil twin, which is quite fitting. You can thank composer Tim Haywood for the impeccable sound design and music for Shadowman. In a great touch, Night Dive hired Tim to work on the remaster. He remastered the sound and tracks, and even composed new tracks for the reinstated cut content. There's one asylum level, the experimentation rooms, that ended up on the cutting room floor for the original game. It's reinstated here in the remastered version. Now, I'm not one who likes to give numerical scores to games or elements of games, but Shadowman gets a 10 out of 10 on the atmosphere front. The sound design and music takes an already great atmosphere with its intricate maze-like levels, makes it into one of the best atmospheric games around. There's more to come on the atmosphere front with Shadowman's later stretches in a different way. But before we get to that, I have to note Tim Haywood's versatility as a composer. Most of his work in the gaming space, the Balloon series, which is the polar opposite of Shadowman in all areas. But the music's still great in a very different way. So, let's get more into the plot of Shadowman and how things unfold. It's minimal for long stretches as we make our way through Deadside collecting the Dark Souls, but it picks up once we can deal with the 5 that Legion brought on board to help in this plan. The book that Maxim St. James left behind for us, the one that shows us what weapons, items, and abilities to expect down the line, this book also contains a prophecy passed down to us by the ancients. Legion has taken many forms over the course of time. A long time ago, he met defeat. Banished to a place beyond the worlds, where the dark souls of his army sealed in the Govi we find amongst Deadside. Legion will return and build the asylum within Deadside, getting Jack Ripper to plan it out. He summoned the 5 mortal men to do his bidding. Through them, he built a gateway of souls to the world of men. But the sorceress, that being Nettie, became aware of this and called upon the shadowman. But in the broad light of day, he fell to the 5 in the world of men. Legion took the power of the dark souls unto him and unleashed his army into the world. That's a bit of a bummer. Let's see if we could do something about this prophecy and change it to a more happy ending. Now, this book that Maxim St. James, the first Shadowman, left behind for us does muddy up some of the canon when it comes to taking the comics into consideration. These writings he left behind have a date of 1888. It was Maxim who constructed the Path of Shadow to explore Deadside without much hindrance. Thing is, in the comics, he doesn't become the Shadowman until the late 19th century. Reading the comics at the same time while playing the game did cause a bit of whiplash as far as keeping track of things, along with tonal shifts. It's like reading a book and watching a show of said book at the same time. There's going to be some differences. Then again, the game of Shadowman, very much its own canon. It's like the Darkness series, one I covered in the past, which was another comic series turned game. They took the broad elements, but made it into their own canon. Within the asylum is the Cathedral Pane. Through exploring the asylum, we'll find retractors that we can use. There are 5 corpses within the Cathedral Pane. Using a retractor on each allows us to enter a schism to enter the 5 live side areas that the 5 reside in. But unless you do further exploration, you won't be able to defeat them, or in some cases even reach them. I first entered the schism of the summer camp in Florida. I couldn't reach the end to face Milton Pike, one of the 5, due to swimming. While Michael can swim to his heart's content in Deadside, he has to deal with limited oxygen in Liveside. As well, he doesn't have access to his voodoo weapons or his shadow gun. As each of the 5 hold a dark soul within them, Michael needs his shadow gun to finish them off for good. Michael can only use his Shadowman powers in Liveside under the cover of night. So, why not wait for night to fall? Well, the game does address this and provides a solution that we could find within Deadside.
Maybe I should just hang back and wait till nightfall, which ain't easy 'cause the 5 are after my blood.
No use hanging back, Mike. The prophecy's upon us, and with every hour we're drawing closer to its terrible conclusion.
Well, if I can't use my shadow powers on the 5, we're screwed.
I have an idea. Your esteemed predecessor, Maxim St. James, once spoke to me of L'Eclipser, the bringer of night, an ancient blade said to release the shadow into the world of men. This blade, hidden deep within the heart of Deadside. You already have one of its pieces. Bring me the other 2, and there may be a way to get you your shadow powers to fight the 5.
Once we collect the 3 required pieces, we can now turn Liveside from day to night, allowing us to deal with the 5.
Lay down, Mike.
I thought you'd never ask. Is, this gonna hurt much?
Yes.
I thought so. Try and be gentle with me.
Bringer of night, L'Eclipser, release the shadow into the world of men. Le Soleil, brother sun, la lune, sister moon, la lamb, the power that binds. And the sorceress fell into a deep trance, her powers exhausted, and a shadow did fall upon the world of men. The prophecy is fulfilled.
Agneta!
It is done. Seek out the 5. Destroy them and the evil that controls them. I must sleep. Must sleep.
Note here, Nettie isn't dead. She's just in the coma for now.
I'm not surprised. She was always one for more than a drop of the hard stuff. Never knows when to stop. I tell you, she used to go like the clappers down the old White Horse Inn.
Jonty, will you listen?
You have a fair amount of flexibility in when and what order you want to deal with the 5. You'll need a higher shadow level to collect all the retractors required to open the schisms to Liveside, but some you could collect earlier on in the game. Thing is, with how warping and checkpoints work in the Liveside sections of the 5, you'll want to deal with Jack the Ripper first, the one we saw in the game's intro, or at least get access to his area first. He spent the last century building the asylum and constructed the schisms between Deadside and Liveside. He's left behind a journal that talks about his constructions from these schisms to the true forms. Within the asylum is an engine block powering the asylum. We can go there beforehand, in which Michael sees Luke, his younger brother.
Help me, Mikey!
Luke!
You gotta
It's okay, Luke. I'm here now. Stay there. I'm coming to get you.
I'm real scared, Mikey. You gotta help me. Please.
Luke, come back. Luke!
We will need to power down the engine blocks to reach Legion. Within each of the 5 is a prism that we could collect after defeating them. This will warp us to a different section of the engine block within the Asylum. These are shorter stretches than the other levels of the Asylum, but do contain the true forms that Jack made note of in his journal. They're part of Legion's army to unleash on the world. When we defeat one, they'll drop a Dark Soul. Take a bit to go down, but nothing that strafing, rolling, and jumping can't deal with. Once we reach the end of each engine block section, there's an operating console to shut off each piston to the engine block. To shut them off, we need to use a combination found in the journal Jack the Ripper left behind. So if you don't go to Jack's section first, where you find his journal, you won't have the combination to shut down the engine block. In my case, the first schism I entered was Pike's, which took me to Florida. I defeated him, went through that stretch of the engine block, only to arrive at a console that I didn't have the combination to. Which sure, you can look up, and that can save you quite the hassle. The game is quite generous with warp points, but not for these stretches. If I wanted to get back to the engine block associated with Pike, I'd have to warp to his live side stretch, go through the gate behind the prism to the engine block, and make my way through the Asylum stretch there back to the console. So depending on what order you take on with the 5, you may find yourself doing a bit of revisiting. But for me, I did go visit Jack's second, so it wasn't a huge deal, but one to make note of. Let's go through each of these 5 schisms and how each of these areas vary in the remastered edition, because there are a number of differences. Starting with Jack the Ripper, whose real name is John G. Pierce, which we can find in his journal. At the beginning of Shadowman, Nettie gave us a document profiling the 5. Thomas Deacon, who created the dossier, makes an in-game appearance in the game's sequel. In late 1999, Jack murdered 4 women: Mary Nicholas, Anna Chaplin, Eliza Strider, and Katrina Edison, all murdered near London Underground stations in the East End of London. These bear a striking resemblance to the names of those he killed back in 1888. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes. He's yet to kill his Mary Kelly in the present day, which he will mention when we fight him.
I'll make a Mary Kelly out of you!
The schism will take us to an abandoned portion of the London Underground. And once again, the atmosphere is something else. At about the same level as what you'll find in the Asylum stretches, but in a different way. This level has a similar structure to the Asylum stretches, maze-like design that's disorienting as you make your way lower into the London Underground. The music is very much in a similar abstract manner to the Asylum levels. It feels like you're descending into the depths of hell. Throughout, Jack will pop up to attack us before warping off. He startled the living daylights out of me the first time around as I was looking the other direction. I did have a bit of a funny moment here with a branching path I took one direction and realized, wait a minute, I'm back at the beginning here. How did I end up back here? That's the beauty of what Shadowman can do with its levels and throwing you off. But through short order, I was able to make my way back to the other path and end up in Jack's lair.
You shouldn't have come here, Michael Loire.
My coming here was unavoidable. It is prophecy, my destiny.
Your destiny is to die. That is the fate of all mortal men.
But I am no longer mortal. I cannot die.
Ha! Dying is easy. I have achieved that end more than once in my existence. And now I have returned as a bloody messiah, an avatar resurrected, a divine servant for my master's great plan.
If dying is easy, then you won't mind if I blow you away, you pathetic little man.
You may try to achieve that end, Michael Loire, but I warn you, you shall not find it a simple task at all. For we are many.
And this fight with Jack, where he crawls on the roof to drop on us with Moonlight Sonata in the background, as the kids would say these days, absolute cinema. This is one of those gaming moments that I won't forget anytime soon. As I brought up in the video's intro, I was kicking myself having not played this game sooner. This was very much one of those moments that solidified that thought.
I'll make a Mary Kelly out of you. I'll make a Mary Kelly out of you. Ah!
Another schism will take us to Queens in New York City to deal with Avery Marks, the home improvement killer. For each murder, he leaves behind the skull of a baby canary with rolled up paper of a short poem within, ending with the words of Legion, for we are many. Each of the 5 will leave something behind with their murder victims, each ending with, for we are many. Of the 5, I found Avery to be the most unsettling. There's such a contrast with that over-the-top voice of his and what he says to his crimes.
Here's Johnny!
What the?
I bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
Don't mess with me, little man.
Little big man. Little big man.
Didn't your mama never tell you? It don't matter how big.
My mama loves me. She never loved you. My mama kisses me. My mama would never, never, ever kiss you. No, not never, ever kiss you. Come to mama now, baby. Sweet baby, come to mama. For we are many.
Making our way through this apartment building, we'll be winding through corridors with Avery popping out every once in a while before warping off. I know I sound like a broken record, but I can't overstate how incredible the atmosphere is within Shadowman. This section may be the peak of its abilities. Even Michael, the Lord of Deadside, finds himself unsettled by what Avery's done here. Even someone like Buffalo Bill from Silence from the Lambs would think of this as extreme.
Please, no.
I love while fighting the 5 how they change form when you do more damage to them. Hit a certain threshold and they'll emerge as their true form. So with the remaining 3 killers, there's quite a difference in if you're playing the remastered version. Throughout other levels, there's changes here and there between the original and remastered. There's a great guide on GameFAQs that breaks them down. But with these 3, you're seeing a nice chunk of restored content that ended up on the cutting room floor of the original due to running out of time. In the original version, Marco Cruz, Milton Pike, and Dr. Victor Batrakian were all in one location, at a jail in Texas. Marco and Milton were going to have their own levels, but were cut for time. But in the remastered version, they added these cut levels back in. How are they? While it's nice to have them playable, I did find them to be a step down from Jack's and Avery's levels. Let's start with Pike's level. The schism takes us to an abandoned summer camp in Florida. Pike is a Vietnam veteran, a Green Beret, discharged after alleged assault of a female officer. Pike would bounce around. He became a TV repairman and joined a militia group before splintering off. He murdered 18 of his own militiamen. From December 1995 to September 1996, Pike murdered 9 women across America. He became known as the Video Nasty Killer. State police received tapes showing Pike hunting down his victims. Within the flesh of each right palm was a microchip containing a poem which again ended with, for we are many. While playing through this area, it did become clear why they did cut it. It's nice to have back in, but I found it to be a bit long-winded without much to do beyond swimming. There's little as far as enemies go. That said, I do love the music here. From what I understand is a new composition by Tim Haywood. Military tunes, the sound of radios, and later on a tune where it's clear it's a tribute to the song The End by The Doors, giving a nod to Apocalypse Now. And Pike himself makes reference to the song when we fight him.
Only power around these parts, boy. You gonna find that out soon enough. You gonna find out what survival is all about. Just like a rerun of the Nam. It's Judgment Day for you and all your kind. This is the end, beautiful friend, for we are many.
Marco Cruz's area does fare far better than Pike's. Cruz kidnapped and killed 10 people over the course of 1996. Driving around the Mojave, he forced his victims off the road and disabled them with a cattle prod. He towed away the victims' vehicles, leaving their license plates on the road sign near the crime scenes. This schism will take us to a salvage yard in the Mojave Desert. This area is more intricate and less spread out than Pike's section. His taste in style music, along with his dialogue, does give a dose of humor compared to the other 5, but also quite dark considering everything he's done.
You know full well that the firewalk's all about keeping you cool, about being the Iceman coming through the valley of outrageous fortune. Here comes slings and arrows, Mr. Yorick. Let's rock and roll through that valley of death. Yee-hoo!
And he's deadly when it comes to fighting him. I didn't have any major issues fighting the others, but I required a few attempts to take Marco down. Be a bit of a bugger when trying to figure out when he's going to stop running and shoot you. The environment can make it tricky to get a hit on him depending on what weapons you're using. And rounding out the 5 is Victor Batrachian. He was the last one I dealt with, and felt fitting. He does come across a bit as the leader here. Before we talk about his area, I want to talk about the game's end stretch as far as collecting Dark Souls goes. Again, there's 120 Dark Souls we could collect. To beat Shadowman, you need a Shadow level of 9 to open the coffin gates along the critical path. This requires 95 Dark Souls. So on the regular, I go back to past areas with new abilities, collect those Dark Souls. At this point near the end stretch, I'd found most of them in each area, save for 1 or 2, but looking at the playroom of the asylum, there were still several I could find. I still need to get to level 9 the Shadow level to unlock these last areas. Then I ended up going around in circles for what felt like ages, wondering why I couldn't find any more damn Dark Souls. Then I realized with the guidance of guide, oh yeah, there's this whole back section I haven't explored. I found these moments earlier on during my playthrough while in the playroom, I leveled up my Shadow level. Instead of continuing, I left to go open other coffin gates and see where those led. The music as well sure didn't help to keeping me there. So by the time I got the final retractor and made my way to the jail through the schism, I wasn't in the best of moods. You know, sometimes you'll have those sessions where you put in a fair amount of time but feel like you made next to no progress? Yeah, that's how I was feeling here. And that no doubt added to the frustration of the jail section. I found myself getting turned around over and over. You unlock doors with a key card when the game shows you, but where was that again? I found myself stumbling through the same cell block over and over. One of those sessions where I should have packed it in sooner than I did. I came back the next day and was like, oh, there we go. You know how it could be. Sometimes you hit your head against the wall dealing with a boss many times over. Then you come back the next day and you win on the first try. This is more or less the only time during Shadowman where I felt the game felt a bit long in the tooth, but that was on me. Should have kept exploring the playroom instead of checking off those coffin gates earlier on. So, Dr. Batrachian. The son of a wealthy Swiss banker, Victor was a brilliant mind, earning a PhD in forensic psychiatry. He was trained to become a general practitioner, but expelled for reasons unknown. Sure, you could guess why. He would head to America in the early 90s, forging green cards and credentials. He formed several medical practices under different names, leaving behind a path of suspicious deaths tied to him. One group of victims were 5 of his patients, wealthy widows who gave Victor their fortunes and their wills. Other victims had forensics stumped, death by exploded head, not from external pressure, but internal. And we'll see this work of Victor's in action at the jail. Caught in the summer of 1997, Victor now sits on death row. He refers to himself as the Lizard King, which we'll hear throughout this level, another reference to the banded doors within Shadowman, which also segues to my second Simpsons reference in this video. Instead of Cruz and Pike here, we'll have to take down helicopters before we reach Victor. Victor has much to say when we reach him.
Good afternoon. May I help you? What I meant to say was, is there something I can do for you?
Yeah, there's something you can do for me.
And what is that, pray tell?
You can get the hell out of my way.
I'm afraid that won't be possible.
Hey, anything's possible, Doc. You, above all people, should know that. I'm sorry, did I call you people? My mistake. You aren't a person at all, are you? Are you?
Don't tell me you're expecting some kind of answer to your rhetorical question.
Oh yeah, I know all about you, Doc. You think you're so smart. Look at you, so smug in your self-belief, the hero at the heart of your own pathetic power fantasy. But really, you're a little baby girl, aren't you? Deep inside, shivering inside, pissing your frilly little panties.
Oh, come now.
A squealing, puking, hairless puppy inside.
Now you're mixing metaphors.
So move out of my way, puppy dog. I won't ask you again.
I will not move out of your way. I will not. Do you know who I am? Do you?
You're a little puppy dog.
Don't call me that. I am Dr. Death. I am the Lizard King. Can't you see what I've accomplished here? I have brought his kingdom to Earth. I am the leader of the 5. You should fear me. Fear me.
I pity you.
That wasn't very nice, now was it? For I shall sit at the right hand of the Lord. Did
you know that? For we are many. Were you aware of that? You ant, you piece of excrement, you nothing!
And now, apocalypse. The end of all things. Your voodoo harlot was correct, Michael dear. The end is nigh.
And it's sooner than you think!
He can be quite vicious in how quick he zeroes in on us with demonic speed. Timing those rolls or jumps can be a bit tricky as a result. With all of the 5 dead and the engine block shut down, we can now progress beyond it, to the area where we saw Michael's brother Luke earlier, who we see once again once we pass the engine block. Yeti brought up a warning earlier that this was Deadside and likely Legion messing with Michael, but in his sheer desperation to see his dead brother once again, Michael doesn't give it a thought. It's very obvious to the player, but it takes time for Michael to realize what's going on when he reaches Luke.
Luke, there you are. What you doing running away like that? Luke, speak to me, kid.
Hiya, Mikey. Glad you could make it. I've been waiting for you. I was scared they were gonna catch me, that you weren't gonna come get me.
Here, Luke, you should have known I'd always be there for you, bro.
There were bad things in the dark, badder than the boogeyman. They did stuff to me, stuff I don't want to think about.
Oh, God, I'm sorry, Luke.
Hey, you want to hear a joke, Mikey?
Sure.
Once upon a time, there was a murderer and his victim walking hand in hand towards some deep, dark woods. The victim squeezes the murderer's hand real tight and says, looking up pleadingly with his big brown eyes, "I'm real scared, mister, of the deep, dark woods."
Luke, what the hell?
He sighs and he says, "You're scared? How the hell do you think I feel?
I'm gonna be walking back through them on my own. Pretty funny, hey, Mikey. Pretty goddamn amusing, don't you think?
You ain't Luke. You ain't my brother.
Congratulations. You win the booby prize. It was never your brother. Just a little insurance to get you here. Really, Michael, you must learn to let the dead rest in peace.
Who are you?
And he asked him, "What is thy name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many."
It was Legion who put together the prophecy. He planted the seed in the mind of the ancients for his eventual return. Handing over the teddy bear, we can't leave this place. We've collected all these dark souls for Legion to claim, and he's here to collect the bill from us, the errand boy. Legion will act as the final boss. He's what you expect, a large health pool, a transformation, has relentless attacks, well, nothing that rolling, jumping, and strafing can't deal with. But a nice touch, you do get a game over or the bad ending if you lose to Legion. Dig the coordination of these true forms as they march on out.
This is the way the world ends, Michael. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Goodbye.
God, no! Shadowman!
With a whimper.
But with a good ending, so ends Shadowman as Michael escapes as the asylum collapses, with one last monologue to cap us off.
This was the one flaw in your plan, Legion. The Dark Souls have given me the power to defeat you. I've read my prophecy, and Legion shall take the Dark Souls unto him. Well, here they are. I think it's time to make a fast exit.
My God, the lad's got him bloody done it. Looks like you owe me that drink, Michael.
I am the Lord of Deadside, walker between the worlds. immortal voodoo warrior. As a god, I stamp upon the writhing face of the dead-side serpent. Weapon in my hand, the arcing death blow. The horror, I embrace it.
And what a journey it's been. I had high expectations going into Shadowman, but never did I think I would enjoy it as much as I did. Man, what a game. But we're not done here. Throughout I brought up the Shadowman comics here and there. The game very much stands on its own. You don't need to read them by any stretch, but I did want to dive into its source material. Wouldn't feel right not to. What I found was a fun, if inconsistent, frustrating experience. Not on the writing front for the most part, but more on the start-stop nature or abrupt ends due to publication shenanigans. To note, I'll be covering the comics up until the release of the game and not any that came past that. So a quick little lesson about Shadowman. It's under the Valiant Comics umbrella. The late Jim Shooter, who passed away only a couple months before writing the script, founded Valiant Comics with a business partner in 1989. He was an editor-in-chief at Marvel beforehand. Jim tried to purchase Marvel outright during the 1980s. He was able to raise around $80 million from investors in a bid to purchase Marvel, but found himself outbid. That said, it gave the confidence to raise funds and start his own company, that being Valiant. The first issue of Shadowman debuted in May of 1992, which as mentioned earlier isn't with Michael Leroy. That's for later. It's Jack Boniface, the third Shadowman, that's center stage here. Around the end of the 19th century, Nettie created the mask and made Maxim St. James the first Shadowman to bear the mask. It was to combat Dark, a necromancer with great power, and his sister Sandria. Note that's Dark with a Q. Dark will act as the overarching villain here, and does make the brief appearance once Michael enters the fold. Sandria, Dark's sister, is a bit of a wild card. Her intentions at times seem vague, and it's not clear if she's working with her brother or against him at points. Maxim St. James, the first Shadowman, falls into a coma in the 1940s. Cole Cardinaux is the second Shadowman, although beyond one mention, we never hear about. In the early 1990s, Nettie decides to give Jack Boniface the mantle and mask as the current Shadowman. He's an up-and-coming jazz sax player out of New Orleans. It was a bit of a jolt to read this run while playing Shadowman. Sharp contrast in tone. This run with Jack Boniface is a much more lighthearted, easygoing affair. Now, let's say it's all fun and games, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. Jack is more carefree, more laid back than Michael. He's not some dark, stoic killer with a dark sense of humor. He's thrust in the world but takes it in stride. He's much more of a multi-dimensional character. But there's no way I could see Jack being the protagonist of Shadowman the same style. If it was like those comic book beat-em-ups from the SNES and Genesis era, sure. But not the world in which Michael will call the shots. And speaking of this world, there's nothing about Deadside yet. That part of the lore isn't established until the run with Michael. Jaunty, nowhere to be found. But Nettie does play a prominent role, but she prefers to stay old here. She stopped keeping up appearances back in the 1940s. She acts as Jack's confidant and housekeeper. Jack has to juggle the burden of being Shadowman, while also balancing his life as a jazz saxophone player on the cusp of a breakthrough. His powers as Shadowman are more vague here and at times seem to adjust to fit the plot as need be. He has superhuman strength, agility, courage, and can heal himself at night. Further into the story, he feels more compelled to the call of the mask. Unlike Michael, it's worn on his face and not stitched to his chest. This one-issue cover, with Jack sitting on his motorcycle in a graveyard playing the sax under the full moon, perfect encapsulation of this run of Shadowman. And what would a comic be without crossovers? There's a couple of them here, like an Aerosmith crossover. A few years removed from their Simpsons appearance, show up for an issue. And then there's the Valiant Universe crossover, the Unity event. Valiant was big into crossovers. Now, I didn't read the other Valiant comics, so this stretch is a bit bizarre and amusing to say the least. Jack finds himself in the 41st century, running into other Valiant characters. He meets and falls in love with a woman named Elia. From her, he learns that Shadowman dies in 1999 fighting Dark. While it's still the early 90s in his time frame, that does weigh on Jack moving forward. Because, to make matters worse, he finds himself ripped away from Elia, returning back to the present. What felt like 6 months to him was only but a few minutes in the present time. But thanks to time and universe shenanigans, he gets another chance to cross paths with Elia in a different time. But at this point it's been a few years and she's moved on, married with 2 kids and a third on the way. Jack says he could try again with time travel shenanigans and meet before she married, to which she responds, the kids, with Jack responding that she wouldn't know, but Elia ending it with he would. But like Elia, Jack moves on and finds someone that's a better fit for him in this time frame. That being Marcia. They have a fun little dynamic meeting on Mardi Gras, only for Jack to stumble over to her place after a strong foe impales him. She's shocked at first, but rolls with everything she comes across moving forward. the comic does hint that there's more to her than meets the eye. Jack has to deal with the struggles of being Shadowman, being a pawn in Nettie's game, and an adversary to Dark. Again, he's also on the brink of a breakthrough in his music career and is now in a relationship with Marcia. But the call of being Shadowman causes friction and conflict for when night calls. It's classic superhero storytelling, dealing with the dual identities as the masked side takes further control. He also has to deal with the knowledge that Shadowman will die in 1999. He still has a few years, but will he succumb to this knowledge or fight his fate? And of course, he has to worry about his identity not being revealed, which comes into play in the later stretches of the comics. Then again, it's not like he's doing much to cover who he is, especially when he's out there on the rooftops playing the sax, long hair flowing. Jack ends up in court on whether he is the Shadowman. Nettie uses her voodoo powers to remove the spirit of Shadowman from Jack, but this causes a rupture. There always needs to be a Dark and a Shadowman. Around this time, with Dark's powers growing, Maxim St. James, the first Shadowman, awakens from his 50-year coma to deal with Dark. This ends up saving Jack, with his case ending up as a mistrial. Jack and Maxim fight over who is the real Shadowman. And after a little over 40 issues, the first run of Shadowman ends in late 1995 with a cliffhanger. Jack comes to the realization that while Shadowman will die in 1999, that doesn't mean he will. He can die beforehand. Everything comes to a head with Jack leaping off a building to his presumed death as the comic ends. Now this is very much a Cole's Note overview of the Jack Boniface run of Shadowman. Beyond Nettie and the idea of Shadowman, there's little overlap here between the comics and the game. But it is a fun read that you can get through in short order. It's very much a 90s comic book. Fun, silly, but knows when to take itself seriously and when to be sincere. With its final issue in late 1995, Shadowman as a comic wouldn't return until early 1997 for its second run with Michael as Shadowman. But even beforehand, there were major changes at Valiant during the first run of Shadowman. In late 1993, sales were starting to drop for Valiant Comics. Its investors, venture capitalists happy with what they made up until then, were looking to cash out. They met with many potential buyers, with the highest bidder being Acclaim Entertainment. Acclaim was looking to acquire comic book IPs and take advantage of them in their growing gaming portfolio. This wasn't the first comic publisher they tried to acquire. Before Valiant, Acclaim tried to buy Image Comics, best known for Spawn at the time, but Image turned them down. Acclaim ended up overpaying for Valiant, acquiring them for around $65 million in 1994, when Valiant was only worth around $30 million. And this mid-90s timeframe wasn't kind to the comic book industry. One key factor being the rise of the speculation market. People were buying comics with the idea of them increasing in value to sell down the road. This resulted in more limited runs, multiple covers, crossovers. This kind of activity began to drive away customers, with sales numbers plummeting and many publishers going out of business. There was a crossover between Valiant Comics and Image Comics that's one of the main culprits of this decline. Each publisher wasn't that familiar with the other's characters, along with clashing working styles and production schedules. By the time they came out, most customers had already moved on. You have to think that someone out there put a lot of their money on the line with comic books and only for their value to plummet. Then they saw the same thing with Beanie Babies as a means of getting money, and that only ended up being in a similar boat. Should have bought something like real estate instead, especially back then. With Acclaim now in control of Valiant, they ordered a reboot of their comics across the board. One of the key reasons for the reboot is to shape the comics to better fit as gaming properties. One example being the Turok series, which went on to become quite a successful gaming franchise. Bloodshot, one of the Valiant IPs, did start development as a game before being cancelled. Acclaim T-Side, the studio that would develop Shadowman, received a whole batch of comics from Acclaim and told them to take their pick. Shadowman, now with Michael Leroy at the helm, was only a handful of issues in at this point. This gave them plenty of flexibility to slot in the timeline. In the comics, most of the action was in live side, so they focused on dead side. Another reason for Shadowman grabbing their attention was the artwork of the early issues of the run with Michael Leroy. Ashley Wood illustrated these issues with his distinct style. He's done much work in the realm of comics and also video game series like Metal Gear Solid and Halo. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to artwork styles, so I asked ChatGPT how to describe this look. Expressionistic comic art with gritty, surreal edge is what it gave to me as an answer. If anyone knows a better way of describing the style, please do leave a comment below. This only lasts for 4 issues before a different illustrator and writer came in. It's more in line with conventional comic art and akin to the work of the first run of Shadowman. Oh, and to note, that first run, Shadowman was 1 word. Here, like the game, it's 2 words. Earlier in the video, I brought the major beats of how Michael became Shadowman and Nettie's involvement. But what about Jack, or Maxim, or Marcia, or Dark, or any lingering threads left over? Well, that's more or less all dropped. Out with the old and in with the new, starting with Jack Boniface on the first page. The comic begins with an autopsy of Jack Boniface. Was this the result of his fall that ended off the first run? Nope. A group emerging from Deadside, led by Tommy Lee Bones, killed Jack. Yep, Jack Boniface, our hero of the first run, gets the Alien 3 treatment of dying off screen. Michael takes up the mantle of Shadowman, or forced into it, to deal with Tommy Lee Bones, who Jonty does make mention of in the game in one of our chats.
Well, there was that little incident with Tommy Lee's undead gang a while back.
But then Michael quits. In desperation, Nettie resurrects Jack from the dead to take up the mantle of Shadowman. Jack fights Michael, only to receive a final death in the passing of the torch moment. Well, passing the torch doesn't feel like the right expression. More like he torched him to death and pissed on his corpse. It's a real slap in the face to Jack as a character. If I were a reader back in the day and waited over a year for the return of Shadowman, I'd be pissed at what they did to Jack. I was pissed reading it over a short time frame. Why not put him in a coma or have him leap from the building be his end? Or he decides to pass the torch to Michael, wish him luck, and go live his life. They did Jack dirty here. And then also reading it today, it's not a huge deal. Besides, it's not like over the last decade or so we've seen writers across all mediums piss all over past works and characters. And considering how Shadowman the game turned out, having a switch to Michael was a-okay in my book. Just wish they gave Jack a better send-off. So, how is this second run of Shadowman comics with Michael at the helm? The word that comes to mind is inconsistent. Sure, there were different writers throughout the first run with Jack, but there was a through line. The second run jumps from baddie to baddie over the course of 20 issues. That's the other main issue, no pun intended, with this run. The first run was over double in length with 43 issues, not including crossovers. Here, it's only 20, and Dark only appears at the tail end. And there seems to be something brewing with those on Live Side using money and technology to harness the power of Deadside, but that's how this run of Shadowman ends. And Michael gets jobbed out on the regular here. He takes several ass-kickings throughout before persevering. Tommy Lee Bones rips his heart out, at one point Son rips the mask off his chest. He falls in love with a cop named Persephone, only for her to end up dead a few issues later, killed off screen. Tortured to death by California Ma, a stone-cold killer to rival Michael in his ways. She's set up to be Michael's rival moving forward, but then the comic ends before anything comes of it. So what was the sudden stoppage out of nowhere in mid-1998? While a frustrating cliffhanger, the first run at least built up to its conclusion. Here it feels like they were only getting things started. While across the board with all Valiant comics, Acclaim ceased productions. Moving forward, they want to focus on miniseries and one-shots. As a company, Acclaim was floundering all over the place, especially with their comics division. While the sales of the Turok games were doing well, it wasn't transitioning to higher comic sales. The gaming and comics divisions were butting heads with one another. Another approach of trying to sell these comic character IPs to Hollywood wasn't going anywhere, or at least nothing that came to fruition. There were talks of a Shadowman movie around this time frame with Ice Cube starring as Shadowman. He was a fan of the series, but nothing ever came of it. So when Michael Law would return in comic form in 1999, it would be to coincide with the game's release and be a miniseries. And even then would only have half its planned number of issues. Before we look at those remaining comics, I do have to bring up this one panel in the second run. There's an issue in which Michael finds himself in a small town that doesn't take kindly to people like Michael. But there is a boy who befriends him. He asks Michael if he's from the Hood. His mama says that colors from the Hood are criminals, and colors who aren't are harmless ones like Bill Cosby. Oh boy. Oh jeez. Oh dear. About that kid. So, 1999 would see two mini-series comics for Shadowman. The first would see a return of Ashley Wood with Paul Jenkins for a 3-issue run on Deadside. Well, they had 4 planned, but only 3 published. Although they would provide the outlines of the 4th issue in a compilation. These have nothing to do with Michael or Nettie, although Jonty will make an appearance. Each issue stands on their own, so look at different individuals and their experience of entering Deadside, how they come to terms with death and what awaits them in the afterlife. First issue, a scientist kidnaps a man to conduct experiments. He stops his heart and brings him back to life over and over to learn what awaits on the other side. These experiments go on for years and years. As for the man, the line between the living and dead further blur. In a dark yet fitting end, the scientist himself dies, and despite learning about Deadside through his experiments, refuses to believe the truth about death. There is no heaven nor hell, only Deadside. And the second issue focuses on this element of heaven and hell. A woman turns to her faith, thinking that this is a test. When she first arrives, some of the Deadsiders are messing with her. Is this hell, or does heaven await her after this test? At long last, she comes to the truth that there is only Deadside and joins in with the Howlers. Doesn't matter who you are or what you did in life, everyone ends up here. In the third and final issue, we have a violent man who enters Deadside. Man with much violence and criminal acts in the real world. He's trying to earn his place here in Deadside with promise of a better standing. He fights others to the amusements of those watching, and while he wins this tournament, turns out it was all a ruse. is all for their amusement. Enjoy your time in Deadside. It's an interesting, compelling short run that's a dark read, but dark in a different way compared to the game. And of course, there's that more abstract, surreal artwork adding to the feel. Something I would love to read a few more issues of. So many different angles you could take of people from different walks of life entering Deadside. And at last, we have the run that ties to the game itself, one coinciding around its release in August of 1999. That said, once again, it had its legs chopped off from under it. Only 6 of the planned 12 issues published. Michael returns, acting as a radio DJ when he's not busy being Shadowman. Nettie appears, although only in mirrors and reflections for some reasons. You see elements like the teddy bear for warping to Deadside in these comics. You have Legion appearing along with Jack the Ripper, but also a different cast of murderers doing the bidding of Legion. And there's this woman named Astrid, who sets off a chain of events that allows Deadside to breach Liveside. She's unaware of it, but she has a strong tie to Deadside like Michael. For Michael, it was his time in a coma that gave him that connection between Liveside and Deadside. For Astrid, she had a twin sister who died before being born. This is enough for Legion to use her as a schism to enter Liveside. But in the end, her sister's spirit ends up saving both her and Michael from peril. Astrid is like the Marcia equivalent of this run. She gets swept up in this world, but takes things in stride and rolls with it quite quickly. She has a fun dynamic with Michael. I was a bit puzzled why she doesn't appear in the game. Well, turns out they did have plans for her to be in the game, but those never came to fruition. Which is too bad, as it would have been nice for Michael to have someone else to go talk to beyond Nettie and Jaunty in the regular. The run ends with the two of them running into Dark at a masquerade, and another annoying cliffhanger with some thugs getting the drop on Michael. So despite only having half the issues published, the writers at least gave a brief synopsis of what they had in mind. Michael and Astrid would start dating. They would find themselves in time travel and multi-dimensional shenanigans where vampires take over the world. They would fix this timeline, or do they? With an ending that you just wouldn't believe. What that was, who knows, that's all we got. But that's how it is with these Shadowman comics. Frustrating and inconsistent. By no means do you need to read them to understand the game or get further enjoyment out of, but it was nice to get a sense of its source material, and how all over the place it could be. Not as a result of shoddy writing for the most part, but Acclaim floundering around like there's no tomorrow. And that would continue with Shadowman and Acclaim as a whole on the gaming front. In 2002, Acclaim T-Side released Shadowman Second Coming. And the most early 2000s thing ever, Second Coming is spelt with a 2 instead of an S. Unlike the first game, Shadowman 2 wasn't a multi-platform title. It only had a PS2 version. I played only a few minutes to get footage for the video. It doesn't have the best of reputations. I did think about covering it as well in all one video, but that's something I might cover at a later day. From what I played, I could sure feel the difference, and not for good. Simon Phipps and Guy Miller, the key leads of the first Shadowman, did work on its sequel in its earlier stretches. They would leave to go work on the Harry Potter series at EA. Acclaim T-Side would shut down not long after the game's release in 2002. And not long for Acclaim itself. After years of slowing sales and questionable business decisions, Acclaim went bankrupt in 2004. But this wouldn't be the end of Shadowman, of Valiant, or even Acclaim, but not for many years. In 2005, a group of entrepreneurs who were fans of the work of Valiant Comics raised funding to acquire the IP rights, forming Valiant Entertainment, which is still going to this day. In 2012, Shadowman would return as a comic, with Jack Boniface once again taking the mantle. That said, I didn't read these comics. I only read up to the ones of the release of Shadowman the game, so I can't make comments on them. There's also another movie in the works, although there's been little news of it since 2017. So it might be like the Ice Cube iteration where nothing will come with it. They're trying for a cinematic universe with Valiant characters, although only Bloodshot has made its way to the screen so far. But Shadowman will see return on the gaming front with Shadowman Dark Legacy, one that there's next to no information about. We have a teaser trailer and some environmental screenshots. It will be with Jack as Shadowman. It's described as a third-person action horror adventure with an RPG-like progression system. On Steam, it has Souls-like as one of its tags. It's set for a second quarter 2026 release. Wish I could say more about it, but that's all we have at this point. It's already been delayed once, so who knows, maybe it's something I will look at down the line. But we're still not done here. Rising from the ashes is Acclaim Entertainment in 2025. A group of investors and industry veterans purchased the trademark to relaunch it. It's a bit vague and unclear what they plan on doing at the moment beyond bringing back old IPs and acting as a publisher. That might be it. Let's take a look at some of these esteemed industry leaders they brought in at the high level. Don't recognize these names, but wait. Jeff Jarrett? This man, he truly is the carny of all carnies. If you're not familiar with Slapnuts, His wrestling entrance theme song is called My World. This truly is his world. We just happen to live in it. I mean, at one point in time, the man had Taylor Swift as a babysitter for his kids. You know, when I make these videos, I never know where some of these rabbit holes will lead. Even more so with Shadowman, as I took a look at the comics as well. But never in a million years did I think people like Ice Cube or Jeff Jarrett would come up in this video. What a ride it's been. Amongst all the chaos going on with Valiant, with Acclaim acquiring the publisher and rebooting the comics, here's a small studio under the Acclaim umbrella in Teesside, England, given the choice of a comic IP. A directive to make a game that blends Zelda and Resident Evil. And what they put out? My goodness. Hard to say at the moment. I think I need a bit more time to pass. All said and done, Shadowman is probably a top 25 game for me. I'd have to sit down and think more about that list, but that feels about right at the moment. What they're able to do here is astonishing. That time frame where 3D games are past most of the growing pains, but still in that experimentation phase. There was still a lack of preconceived notions or best practices of what a game should be. As a result, you get something like Shadowman. Progression that bears strong resemblance to a Metroidvania before that became a well-established template. And the 3D one to boot, which is still a rarity these days. This channel's given me a chance to check out games I've been meaning to for some time. Many have left me wanting to kick myself for not having covered them sooner, but none as much as Shadowman. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. I do have a Discord channel as well if you'd like to join. Special shout out to the Boulder Punchers who give extra support to the channel on Patreon or YouTube memberships. For those in complete global saturation tier, American Boot, Flan Nagel. For those in the thank you for your patronage tier, Tom Terrible. For those in the now this is Boulder punching tier, Ethan, the Madman in Waco, the original Narcisse Diet Thick Dude TM Neo Edition, these Korean characters that translate to Neitu. For those in the Jill Sandwich tier, On Hell, Benji, Benny Winterdawn, BB F. Bloxburg, Dark Rod 99, Extraordinary 2, Happy Tunes, Logan Lepin, Mad Morpheus Gaming, Michael Walters, Nico Pero, Sam Jones, Squid Vicious, Will Han, and Zin. And now for the post-video Q&A. Those in the Jill Sandwich tier and higher can ask questions, starting with Flan Nagel. Were you aware of Valiant comics when games like Shadowman and Turok and Armorines came out, or is that something you discovered much later? So Flan, that was something I discovered much later. As I brought up in the video, being a young kid, I wasn't able to make Shadowman a blockbuster night, but what I did mention is I did so for Turok, which Night Dive has also done a remaster for. I don't know when, but at some point down the line, I did discover, oh wait, these are based off comics. So thanks for the question, Flan Nagel. From Extraordinary 2, if you were to have superpowers, what would they be? So the ones that pop to mind is flying. For a laugh, I think it'd also be funny to have that one invisibility power like the guy from the movie Mystery Men, where he could turn invisible, but only if no one was looking. Something about that always stuck with me as hilarious. I don't know if I want something too extreme. After all, with great power comes great responsibility. Not sure I exactly want to deal with that. So thanks for the question, Extraordinary 2. And if you want to receive early access to videos, be featured in the credits, receive periodic updates, and more, do consider joining as a Patreon or YouTube member. If not monthly, supporting the channel with a one-time donation through Ko-fi and Super Thanks. Again, check out the pinned comment in the description if you're interested. For upcoming videos, do expect more coverage on new releases. The coming months are ripe with notable horror releases, amongst others. Along with that, other oddballs out of left fields from games from many years past. Thanks once again, and I'll see you in the next video.
I feel as though my powers are almost at their peak. The souls within me burn with a dreadful fire that threatens to consume me. I must exercise the utmost care from here on in, or find myself succumbing to Asylum's dark allure.